How's it going, everyone? My name is Jovani and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going through this 4.8 LS block that I have that I'm going to be putting in my 1981 C20 pickup. I know previously I said this was a 1985 Chevy pickup, however I just got the title and it is a 1981. So that's news to me. But before we do that, we need to do a couple things to it. Most importantly, we're going to be putting new pistons in this since some of these pistons actually have ring damage. In addition to that, we're going to be honing the cylinders, putting any gaskets that need to be put, and then putting it all back together and getting it ready to drop in. So I hope you guys are excited, and let's go ahead and get started. So as you can probably already tell, we've got the heads off. We've got pretty much everything off the engine block itself. Oil pans off. Pretty much everything we need off is off. The valley cover's still on, but we don't really need to worry about that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove all the lifters out of here. Check them, make sure they're all okay. And then we're gonna go ahead and flip the block over and start removing the pistons and rods. My favorite way to pull out lifters is just to get a long pair of pliers like these and grab them, and they usually just come right out. I'm just gonna lay them on the valley cover right now in the order that I'm pulling them, and then we're going to bag them in some oil. That way they stay fresh and don't get any surface rust on them. Pretty much the only thing I do for lifters is I hose them off with some brake clean just to get any gunked up oil off of them. And then once that's done, I just re-oil them by soaking them in a Ziploc bag. And that's usually all I do for lifters. Obviously I'm going to check for wear or any cracked lifters or anything like that. But these ones are looking okay right now. So yeah, you can see some of these get some pretty good gunk on them. So as you can see, our lifters are in very good condition. There's no scoring, there's no gouges on them. The only thing is they're a little bit gunked up, but like I said, we just spray them off with some brake clean and then soak them in some fresh oil and they're usually good to go. These ones don't have anything significant on them, so we're gonna go ahead and send these lifters. Ideally, since we're using the same cam with these lifters, you would want to keep them all kind of separate, know where each one of them goes. But in this instance, I don't really care that much. So I'm just going to be putting them, stacking them up on top of each other and putting them away for now, so I can get to cleaning them later. Now that we got the lifters out, we're going to go ahead and just rotate the motor on its side. Just want to do this slow. Because once it gets over the top, it gets kind of heavy. Put in our safety pin there. Alright, so now we have the underside of the motor. What I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to take off this pickup tube, windage tray, and then we'll have access to the rod bolts. So the windage tray, these are all 13mm bolts. Alright, so now we have our crank exposed. We have all the rod bolts exposed. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab the crank bolt so that way I have a way of turning the crank. And then we're just going to start removing the pistons one by one. 24mm on the crank bolt. Just going to get it tight. And that way we can rotate our crank. We're just going to start removing our rods and rod bolts. Basically it just goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1 is the one closest to the front of the engine. So these are all 13mm bolts, I believe. So we're just gonna zip these out, take the bearings off, and it's important that we're going to mark everything on this portion of it because the rod bearing caps are actually a cracked forged kind of thing. So each one goes to their respective rod. I misspoke, they're 10mm. All right, so the rod caps are actually 11mm. We can remove the bearing cap. As you can see, no real signs of scoring or anything. They all look pretty good. They're a little worn, but not terrible. I think this is good enough for us. So I'm gonna put this one aside right now. On my tool cart there, I just have it, I have enough space to where I can put each piston and cap respectively in order. So that is piston number 1, and then what I do is I usually push down the piston as much as I can, and then I'll grab like a rubber handled thing like this and just kind of Oh, send it all the way. Try not to drop it on the floor like I just did, but if you do, it's no big deal. So our bearing cap fell out with the piston, but again, I'll show you guys in just one second. You can see, besides the dirt that I just picked up from the floor, there's no real scoring. This one does have a slight score, but you can barely feel it with your fingernail. So again, these are gonna be good enough for us. And then we just repeat that process throughout the whole block and just keep them all in order. And that's really all it takes. Alright, so we got all the pistons out of the block. However, I just wanted to show you guys why I'm replacing the pistons in the first place. This is cylinder number 5. And as you can see, I mean, it's just gone. There is no hope saving this. It is completely destroyed. So that's no worry, the rod's not bent, everything else is straight. Also, if you look in the board itself, there is no pitting, there is no damages. It's a little rough right here, but I believe that is just kind of some grime from oil. So I believe that will hone out with our cylinder hone. Everything else looks great. Surprisingly, you know, that piston detonating didn't actually affect the bore at all. So that's a really good sign. That gives me hope that we can actually reuse this block. Every other cylinder bore is perfectly fine. So next step is going to be actually honing the cylinders. We're gonna go ahead and grab our engine hone and then we'll start that process. All right, so this is our engine cylinder hone. It is just a cheapo Harbor Freight engine hone. I think they're about 20 bucks. This one's been used many times. And basically the way this works is we're just gonna kind of pre-lube the cylinders with some PB Blaster. You can use engine oil, you can use anything like that. Just gonna get the hone in here like this. And we're just gonna start off slow and work our way down and increase the speed as we go. And then you wanna start going in and out like this. Don't go too deep, you'll hit the crank. All right, there we go. I think I'm gonna do it one more time, but I wanna show you guys just what it looks like already. So that's what our cylinder looks like afterwards. I need to get a little bit more cross hatching in there. You can see a lot of horizontal lines, but I need some diagonal lines in there as well. Or I prefer some, I don't need some in there. That's just oil residue. So I'm gonna do it one more time, just real quick, just in and out, and then we'll see how it looks. All right, that's looking decent. So I think I'm gonna call that good on that cylinder. And then we're just gonna repeat the process for all 8 cylinders. Alright, so as you can see, our bores are looking absolutely beautiful. They all cleaned up really well. There's no real issues with them. So our next step is actually going to be putting the pistons on the rods. That process is a little bit more involved. I'm going to go ahead and do one for you guys on camera, and then I'm going to do the rest off camera so we can get this done. This is our number 5 piston, the one that completely exploded. So with 4.8 and 5.3 pistons, the wrist pin is actually pressed in. You can see I pushed this one out just a little bit so you guys could see. But basically what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna get these up on a shop press and just push the wrist pin out. It's really not that hard with a shop press. I wanted to try to show you guys another method of just hammering them out, but honestly it's causing more damage than good. You can see I already kind of nicked my rod there. No big deal, I'll live with it. If you're like me and you don't have a shop press, basically just borrow one, go to a buddy shop, go to a engine shop, ask them to press these out. It shouldn't really cost a lot of money to do this. Yeah, that's honestly the best way to do it. I was trying to pound it out with a socket and a hammer, but it's honestly just causing more damage than it is good. I'm gonna go borrow my buddy's shop press these out. It'll take less than 10 minutes, and then I'll be back when we're putting these pistons back in the engine. All right, so I think we're just about ready to start slapping together this engine. I have all my new pistons on the rods. I'm gonna be reusing all the bearings for this engine because they all look like they're in decent condition. And it's pretty self-explanatory. We're just gonna start slapping each piston in on each side. We'll flip the engine over, tighten up all the rod caps, and then we're just about done with the bottom end assembly. The most important thing to do when we're doing this is just to make sure that we keep the rod cap together with the right rod, because they are, again, friction cracked rods, so each rod cap has to go with the rod that it came off of. So that part's not too bad. We're just gonna slap them all in and get this done. But before we do any of this, obviously we need to put our piston rings on. I have a set of new piston rings that we're gonna put on here. They should be gapped already, but I'm just gonna test a couple, make sure they're the right gap, and then we're going to put them in. All right, I lied. These are the new piston rings, but as you can see here, they are basically overlapping each other once they're in the bore. So I will have to gap all of these, so that's gonna take a little while. All right, so we're back to working on this guy. I finally got my rings in for it. Got the new box of D&J piston rings. Probably the cheapest set I can find on Amazon. As you guys saw before this, I had ordered these. These are the Diamond Power piston ring set. I had this for a while now. Pretty much nowhere on this box does it mention that these are oversized piston rings. I messed up when I ordered them. I had to go back to my eBay history from like 2 years ago, and I saw that they were like 30 over rings. So those are no use to us right now because we're not boring this guy out. I mean, if any of you guys need some 30 over piston rings, let me know. I'll ship them to you. Just pay for shipping. Other than that, this is the new ring kind of pressed into the cylinder bore right now, and I'm checking for ring gap. This is probably the most crucial part of this whole thing right here. I shouldn't say crucial because it doesn't really matter that much. It just depends if you're gonna be running boost or not. This one right here, it is about 20, I would say 20 is about a safe bet. 2021 is the ring gap for the top ring. That, I believe, is stock. And what I'm kind of contemplating right now is whether or not I want to go over or not. And sorry about the background noise. I got my baby girl in the truck watching YouTube Kids over there. Anywho, I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to go bigger on the ring gap. You know, it doesn't really hurt to go a little bit over. I would say 28 on the top and bottom rings or top and middle rings is fine. That's a good medium for boost and NA power. So I'm thinking I'm going to gap all these rings to 28. And then we'll slap them on the pistons, and we'll get ready to finish this video. All right, so this is kind of my makeshift kind of death trap piston ring grinder. Obviously, if you have a piston ring grinder, use that. This is just a really ghetto makeshift angle grinder clamped to engine stand kind of thing. But basically, I'm just gonna turn it on, barely even nick this thing. Like literally, I'm gonna go bent on each side. That should get us right around to 25, which if it gets to 25, I'm fine with. 25's perfect for what I'm doing. If I want to boost it later on down the road, I can always gap them a little bit bigger, or I can run it at 25. It's no big deal. So let's go ahead and do this without cutting our fingers off. This is pretty much how you keep your kids occupied in the garage. Stick them in the back of the truck bed, turn the TV on, and you're good to go. Alright, so we got our piston ring ground lightly. We're just going to stick it in there, grab our piston, kind of just level it off so it's nice and flat in the bore. And I got my 25 out. You're going to get this just, yeah, you know what? Let's see. So, this is 25. It's a little bit smaller than 25, so I'm just gonna go a little bit more, and that should just about do. All right, so this is our 25, and as you can see, it's a really tight fit, so it's probably more like 24, but it fits perfectly. 25 is good enough for me and the girls I date. So I get to do this about 16 more times. I'm gonna do 25 on both the top and bottom ring. Oil containment rings, those ones you don't touch. The gap on those should be okay. And then I will be right back and we'll start putting the pistons in. Alright, so another method you guys could use if you're doing this, just grab a flat file like this, and you're basically just gonna scratch one side like 10 times, check it, make sure there's an even wear pattern. Obviously these ones are black so I can tell, but if not, just, you know, a good like 10 times or so on each side. And then we're gonna pop it in the bore. Pop it in there, level it off with the piston, and check it, and we're pretty much there. We can go like 2 more times on each side. Okay, so pop that in. It's almost there, but you guys get the point. Cheap, easy way to do this. It's a little bit more accurate than the angle grinder way. I wouldn't recommend the angle grinder if you're trying to like keep it to an exact thousandths of a degree, or if you're trying to keep it to an exact thousandths of an inch. So, and there we go, 25. So we'll do that 8 more times and we'll be done. Alright, so I got all the rings gapped. They're well within spec, within 25. And remember, 25 is just what I decided to do. You guys might have to do different ring gaps, or you can just keep it stock. If you guys plan on just keeping your engine completely stock, like, the thing about ring gaps is they will gap themselves eventually. So instead of going straight to 28 like I was going to, I figured 25, you know, in 100,000 miles, those things should be right around 27, 28. This is probably about the second most important part of this whole thing, and that is your piston ring orientation when you actually put them on the piston itself. Okay, so this is about the best shot I can get for you guys. But if you look, this is the notch on the top of the piston. I have my first oil control ring off like maybe 45 degrees to the side of that. And then I have the bottom one just like opposite of that. So they'll have like, they'll be offset by about like 60 degrees each. That's the bottom rings. Those are the oil control rings. That's about the orientation you want. If you don't have a notch on the top of your piston, well, just pick a face of the piston. Our next ring is going to be our second ring, our middle ring. This one we're just going to put in here. Yeah, this one's just going to go in its place, and then we're going to rotate it so it's facing one of the skirts of the piston. And lastly, we have our top ring. This one we're going to put on the opposite direction of that one. Okay, so when you look at the piston now, we have our top ring pointed to one skirt, our second ring pointed to the other skirt, and then we have our oil control rings with a gap right here and right here. So now your piston's pretty much ready to slap in. I just use a cheap Harbor Freight piston ring compressor. It does the job. It's kind of cumbersome, but it does the job. If you're going to be working on, if you know you're going to be working on a lot of LS engines, I recommend going to summit.com. They have a couple different size ones. ICT Billet has some stuff too. And yeah, just pick one for your bore size and it makes the job go a lot simpler. Other thing is like a rubber mallet or some kind of a rubber thing to kind of tap the pistons in once they're in the compressor. And that's really it. Make sure you got your bearings on your pistons, and that's really all there is to it. So I'm going to go ahead and put all the rings on the pistons, and then I'm going to start putting them in, and then we'll be just about done with the bottom end. Alright, before we wrap up this video, I just want to show you guys me actually installing one of these. I just grabbed a random piston, happened to be number 5. So basically, grab the Harbor Freight one. This is how it works. If you just unhook it, it opens up nice and big, way too big for any good use. So basically we wrap it around there, grab our cranking key, crank the shit out of it. Okay, make sure our bearing's on there. Also, your dot, the notch on the piston, the dot on the piston, you're going to face that towards the crank. Okay? Grab our piston, line it up in there. I'm going to use this for now. But basically, yeah, you're just going to tap this guy in. We might have to compress down just a little bit more. You don't want it so tight that the piston doesn't move, but you don't want it too loose to where the rings don't compress. But basically, plastic hammer handle. Okay, and that's about it. Piston's in. Obviously everything's going to be really tight right now. There's no lubrication. You can lube up the boards if you want to. It doesn't really help much at all, but that's about it. So piston's in there. I'm gonna put everything in for now, and then obviously flip the engine over and bolt all the end caps on. But yeah guys, that should sum it up for this one. I don't want this video to be too long. I'm finishing this video, it's March 28th today, I think. You know, I've been home for a week or so, and I know many of you guys are home for a while, who knows how long. Moral of the story is, I'm gonna make a lot of content for you guys. I'm gonna try to make as much content because I know it sucks to be at home bored with nothing to do. So hopefully I can make some videos for you guys. You know, if you guys have any questions or ideas for videos, just go ahead and comment down below. I'd love to hear them. I'll do whatever I can to keep you guys entertained. Other than that, as always, you can follow me on Instagram at Jovani Dante. Follow my Facebook page, Jovani Dante Griego. If you want to see more LS content, stuff like this, watch me finish this truck, hit that subscribe button. It's free, doesn't cost anything. If you want to hit the like button on this video, that helps me out quite a bit. I have a website, JovaniDanteGriego.com. You can check it out. Got a couple blog articles on there. Nothing too crazy. And yeah, take care of yourselves, wash your hands, and I'll see you guys in the next one.